fanatical.
Maybe. How about here?
I'm here.
I'm getting out.
Come here.
There he is.
Probably not like me now.
Be good. You'll get over it.
Matter to me.
Be good.
Catch the hash,
You
Daniel.
be good.
What? Door? Yes.
I know.
I forgot to get my reading glasses. Look like I'm getting ready to send some prescription. Well, they've got
I'm a fanatic.
At least I'm trying to be. Trying to look like the man who lived 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. Folks don't understand me, but you see, I'm living this way. And I think on the other side of me, I have a big smile on my face. Every day, living my dear, trying to hear what he has to say. Practicing loving, learning to obey. I am fanatical, yes, I'm fanatical, learning to say. You are fanatical, different as he could be. He looks just like his father, without a beginning and an end. And one thing on his mind, when he looks on the other side of time, everything for all mankind. Every day, living right here, trying to hear what he has to say. Practicing loving, learning to obey. I am fanatical, yes, I'm fanatical, learning to say.
Page 37. 37.
Fellowship, reach out to one another. Fellowship, learning how to be a brother, always friends. We must love each other to have fellowship, fellowship with Him. It's for English deep, waking up the ones who sleep, strengthening the weak along the way. This is for the soul, a shelter from the cold fire, burns in our hearts for many days. Fellowship, reach out to one another. Fellowship, learning how to be a brother, always friends. We must love each other to have fellowship, fellowship with Him. It's not hard to respond to a smile that's truly warm, and arms that pull us back from where we've been. They bring peace. There's no counting peace and love and joy. You're us to live. We call it fellowship. Reach out to one another, fellowship. Learning how to be a brother, always friends. We must love each other to have fellowship, fellowship with
Father Yahweh, thank you for protecting us throughout the week. Father, thank you for giving us everything that we need. Father, thank you for your word. We ask that you send your spirit with us. Help us to understand your way of life. Help us, give us strength to walk in your footsteps. Give us eyes to see and a mind to understand, ears to hear. Help us to have fellowship. Learn to love each other. Give thanks and ask all of this in Yeshua's name. Baruch haba b'shem Yahweh. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh.
Okay, let's see here. All right, pretty much our standard announcements. We've got our prayer and praises board up here. If you have anything there, put them up there and they'll be captured. And Deborah will send that out in an email. And if you'd like to be on the email, get with Deborah or one of the elders and we'll get you hooked up. Also, if you'd like to read Torah, there's our list over here on the wall. Feel free to put your name up there. And reminder to silence cell phones. And the 26th of July will be the 5th month. And again, sunset's about 7:45, so we'll meet probably between 7 and 7:30 for that new moon. And just a reminder, we've been making this announcement for a few weeks. We're trying to encourage the women that help prepare foods for the our fellowship afterwards to kind of keep it simple and such so that we're not overburdening our ladies with work on Shabbat and keeping in the spirit of resting on Shabbat. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Caitlin for Torah.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We are starting in Numbers 19:1 through 22:1. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, This is the ordinance of the law which Yahweh has commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And you shall give her to Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth outside the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle of her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. And one shall burn the heifer in his sight. Her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall he burn. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the evening. And he that burns her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay them up outside the camp in a clean place. And it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water of separation. It is a purification for sin. And he that gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. And it shall be to the children of Israel, and to the stranger that sojourns among them, for a statute forever. He that touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean for 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purifies not himself the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. Whoever touches the dead body of any man that is dead, and purifies not himself, defiles the tabernacle of Yahweh, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water of separation was not sprinkled upon him, he shall be unclean. His uncleanness is yet upon him. This is the law when a man dies in a tent. All that come into the tent, and all that is in the tent, shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel which has no covering bound upon it is unclean. And whoever touches one that is slain with a sword in the open fields, or a dead body, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for an unclean person they shall take of the ashes of the burnt heifer, a purification for sin, and running water shall be put thereto in a vessel. And a clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon all the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon him that touched a bone, or one slain, or one dead, or a grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify himself, and wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at evening. But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from among the congregation, because he has defiled the sanctuary of Yahweh. The water of separation has not been sprinkled upon him. He is unclean. And it shall be a perpetual statute to them, that he that sprinkles the water of separation shall wash his clothes, and he that touches the water of separation shall be unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and the soul that touches it shall be unclean until evening. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the 1st month. And the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there, and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, and they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people strove with Moses and spoke, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before Yahweh! And why have you brought up the congregation of Yahweh into this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die here? And why have you made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place? It is no place of seed, or of figs, or of vines, or of pomegranates. Neither is there any water to drink. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they fell upon their faces. And the glory of Yahweh appeared to them. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather you the assembly together, you and Aaron your brother, and speak you to the rock before their eyes. And it shall give forth his water, and you shall bring forth to them water out of the rock. So you shall give the congregation and their beasts drink. And Moses took the rod from before Yahweh, as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said to them, Hear now, you rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with Yahweh, and he was sanctified in them. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the trouble that has befallen us, how our fathers went down into Egypt, and we have dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers. And when we cried unto Yahweh, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and has brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the outermost of your border. Let us pass, I pray you, through your country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the right hand nor to the left, until we have passed your borders. And Edom said to him, You shall not pass by me, lest I come out against you with the sword. And the children of Israel said unto him, We will go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of your water, then I will pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, Ye shall not go through. And Edom came out against them with much people and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border. Therefore Israel turned away from him. And the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh, and came to Mount Hor. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor, by the coast of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered to his people, and shall die there. And Moses did as Yahweh commanded, and they went up into Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there in the top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they mourned for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. And when King Odad the Canaanite, which dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of the spies, then he fought against Israel, and took some of them prisoners. And Israel vowed a vow unto Yahweh, and said, If you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And Yahweh listened to the voice of Israel, and delivered up the Canaanites. And they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And he called the name of the place Kormah. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea, to encompass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses, Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loathes this light bread. And Yahweh sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. Pray unto Yahweh that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And Yahweh said to Moses, Make you a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looks upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he saw the serpent of brass, he lived. And the children of Israel set forward, and pitched in Oboth. And they journeyed from Oboth, and pitched at Iyabarim. in the wilderness which is before Moab, toward the sun rising. From there they removed and pitched in the valley of Zared. From there they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that comes out of the coast of the Amorites. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Therefore it is said in the book of the wars of Yahweh, what he did in the Red Sea and in the brooks of Arnon, and at the stream of the brooks that goes down to the dwelling of Ar, and lies upon the border of Moab. And from there they went to Ber, that is the well whereof Yahweh spoke to Moses, gather the people together, and I will give them water. Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing you to it. The princes dug the well, the nobles of the people dug it, by the direction of the lawgiver with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth in the valley, that is in the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looks towards Yeshimon. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through your land. We will not turn into the fields or into the vineyards. We will not drink of the waters of the well, but we will go along by the king's highway until we are past your borders. And Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his border, but Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel into the wilderness. And he came to Yahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword, and possessed his land from Arnon to Yabok, even to the children of Ammon. For the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, and Heshbon, and in all the villages thereof. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, even to Arnon. Therefore they that speak in Proverbs say, Come into Heshbon, let the city of Sihon be built and prepared. For there is a fire gone out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It has consumed Ar of Moab, and the lords of the high places of Arnon. Woe to you, Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh. He has given his sons that escaped, and his daughters into captivity to Sihon, king of the Amorites. We have shot at them. Heshbon is perished even to Dibon, and we have laid them waste even to Nophah, which reaches to Medeba. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Yazer, and they took the villages thereof, and drove out the Amorites that were there. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og the king of Bashan went out against them, he and all his people, to the battle at Edrei. And Yahweh said to Moses, Fear him not, for I have delivered him into your hand, and all his people and his land. And ye shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, which dwelt at Heshbon. So they smote him and his sons and all his people, until there was none left alive, and they possessed his land. And the children of Israel set forward, and pitched in the plains of Moab, on this side of the Jordan, by Jericho. Next, we are in Judges 11:1 through 33. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead begot Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bore him sons. And his wife's sons grew up, and they thrust out Jephthah, and said to him, Ye shall not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of a strange woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers, and dwelt in the land of Tob. And there were gathered vain men to Jephthah, and went out with him. And it came to pass in the process of time that the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah out of the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, Come and be our captain, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, Did not you hate me and expel me out of my father's house? And why have you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, Therefore we turn again to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. And Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, If you bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and Yahweh delivers them before me, shall I be your head? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, Yahweh be witness between us, if we do not so according to your words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and captain over them. And Jephthah uttered all his words before Yahweh in Mizpeh. And Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, saying, What have you to do with me, that you have come against me to fight in my land? And the king of the children of Ammon answered to the messengers of Jephthah, Because Israel took away my land when they came up out of Egypt, from Arnon even to Yabok, and unto the Jordan. Now therefore restore these lands again peaceably. And Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the children of Ammon, and said to him, Thus says Jephthah, Israel took not away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. But when Israel came up from Egypt, and walked through the wilderness unto the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Let me, I pray, pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen thereto. And in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent, and Israel stayed in Kadesh. Then they went along through the wilderness, and encompassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and pitched on the other side of Arnon, but came not within the border of Moab, for Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon. And Israel said to him, Let us pass, we pray you, through your land into my place. But Sihon trusted not Israel to pass through his coast. But Sihon gathered all his people together, and pitched in Yahaz, and fought against Israel. And Yahweh, God of Israel, delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. And they possessed all the coasts of the Amorites, from Arnon even to Yabok, and from the wilderness even to the Jordan. So now Yahweh, God of Israel, has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And should you possess it? Will not you possess that which Chemosh your God gives you to possess? So whomever Yahweh our God shall drive out from before us, them we will possess. And now are you anything better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelt in Heshbon and her towns, and in Arer and her towns, and in all the cities that are along by the coast of Arnon, for 300 years? Why therefore did you not recover them within that time? Therefore I have not sinned against you, but you do me wrong to war against me. Yahweh the judge is judge this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. However, the king of the children of Ammon listened not to the words of Jephthah, which he sent him. Then the Spirit of Yahweh came upon Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpeh of Gilead, and from Mizpeh of Gilead he passed over to the children of Ammon. And Jephthah vowed a vow unto Yahweh, and said, If you shall without fail deliver the children of Ammon into my hands, then it shall be that whatever comes forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be Yahweh's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So Jephthah passed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and Yahweh delivered them into their hands. And he smote them from Aroer, even till ye come to Minnith, even 20 cities, and to the plain of the vineyards, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. Last, we're in Matthew 6:19 through 24. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust does corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust does corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light. But if your eye is evil, your whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. That concludes the readings for today.
Yeah, it's close enough.
I know.
A little more of my plates.
Oh, they're in here.
Rick.
Oh, yeah. Yes, okay. Okay, start the timer. Brothers and sisters, I have told you, and you know how uncomfortable I am standing here in this position, and you know why. You may wonder why the overboard attire today. It is because if it were just me, I wouldn't be standing here right now bringing this topic to you today. Like the prophets of old, and trust me, I am not a prophet of old, not even a prophet today, but they used physical objects to make their points. I had always thought that a lot of what Paul wrote in his addresses were addressing local customs and traditions. While this may be the case in some of his writings, I'm not so sure about the sections that I will be covering today. I was recently reading a book by Ellis Schofield and was prompted to give the topic as a message. Okay, thought, well, this would be an interesting topic to cover. But then a few days later, we read the very same scriptures in our personal scripture study with my wife and I, and we had a discussion about it. Second witness. When Yahweh tells me something twice, I pay attention. Then, a few days later, I was mowing the lawn, and while I do that, I like to listen to podcasts, and I was listening to the Naked Bible podcast by Michael Heiser, and guess what the topic was? Third witness. When I get a third witness from Yahweh, this is one better than the fleece story of Gideon. So he had my attention, and I have no question that this is what I am supposed to be presenting to you today. Even then, after I had begun working on this message, Yahweh gave me a dream that showed me a few things more that I should enter and add to this. So if this isn't the working of the Spirit, I don't know what is. Now, I'm going to ask the fathers in the room, and I've already talked to most everybody, I think already previous to this, and those in our extended congregation online, to remove any children from the room, because we're going to be talking about adult topics today. And if fathers do have to go take care of their children, I want them to listen to this afterwards with their wives when their children aren't around, as long as we don't get a first ever strike on YouTube. I'm also going to apologize in advance. I've been told to step this up today. This is going to be one of my most lengthy addresses. So get comfortable, grab your popcorn. I'll try not to bore you. I'll be using the ESV translation today, unless I'm quoting other sources. And I'll do my best to replace the sacred names where appropriate. Now, let me be clear. What I'm covering today is not necessarily a commandment of Yahweh. And I'm not going to tell you that you must conform to what the scriptures imply. But I would like you to consider first this scripture as I present this material. Acts 8:26. Now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go toward the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place." And he rose and went, and there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasure. He had come to Jerusalem to worship and was returning seated in his chariot, and he was reading from the prophet Isaiah. And the Spirit said to Philip, "Go over and join his chariot." So Philip ran to him and heard him reading the prophet and asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he said, how can I unless someone guides me? And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now the passage of scripture that he was reading was this: like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, and like a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he opens not his mouth. And in his humiliation justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life was taken away from the earth. And the eunuch said to Philip, "About whom, I ask you, does this prophet say this? About himself or about someone else?" Then Philip opened his mouth, and beginning with the scripture, he told him the good news about Yeshua. And as they were going along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, "See, here is water. What prevents me from being baptized?" And he commanded the chariot to stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. And when they came out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip away, and the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way, rejoicing. We believe that we need to study the Bible in the original history, language, and culture. That's what I'm going to be attempting to do for you today. As we study the scriptures, as with this eunuch, we often need help to understand. One way is to seek out other Bible translations and also to consult Bible commentaries. Today, I want you to look at my comments as a biblical scholarly commentary. I will be drawing from the work of Ellis Schofield, Dr. Heiser, as well as their references to other biblical scholars. These are men that are well studied in the ancient Near East history, language, and culture. I will be adding a bit of my personal observations, but mostly in relation to recent social traditions I have observed in my life experience. Together, I hope I will give you a greater understanding of what has happened, or what was happening as we played Jeopardy with Paul in Corinthians, and may give you something to ponder and consider in your own personal walk in the way. Let us begin with Paul's words in Corinthians. You will understand my attire as we read from 1 Corinthians 11:1. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Now I commend you because you remember me in everything and maintain the traditions, even as I have delivered them to you. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is Yahweh. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. But every wife who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, since it is the same as if her head were shaven. For if a wife will not cover her head, then she should cut her hair short. But since it is disgraceful for a wife to cut off her hair or shave her head, let her cover her head. For a man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of man. For man was not made from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. That is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head, because of the angels. Nevertheless, in the Lord, Nevertheless, in the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor man of woman. For as woman was made from man, so man is now born of woman, and all things are from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it proper for a wife to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not nature itself teach you that if a man wears long hair, it is a disgrace for him? But if a woman has long hair, it is her glory, for her hair is given to her for a covering. If anyone is inclined to be contentious, we have no such practice, nor do the churches of God. We'll be primarily discussing this passage, but we will touch on this next passage as well. In 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. As in all the churches of the saints, the women should keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be in submission, as the law also says. If there is anything they desire to learn, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is shameful for a woman to speak in church. You will find few, if any, pastors in the traditional church or even in the Hebrew Roots movement that would take on the task of addressing this topic. Let me quote Paul once more. 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise, and God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. So here I am. What I hope is a humble servant of Yahweh delivering the message that he has directed me to deliver. The sections of the Bible I am addressing are difficult to understand. If you are looking at them from our Western mind worldview. However, I am going to present some historical and cultural perspectives that might seem outlandish to us, but would be in the worldview of a Torah-observant Hebrew of the Second Temple period. You will find the explanation would seem rational to the people of this period. I will then try to help us bring this understanding forward to our current culture, traditions, and circumstances, and provide some things you may wish to consider. Michael Heiser in episode 86 of the Naked Bible podcast asserts, and I quote, Paul is making an argument from nature as he understands nature, and this is the issue of either disgrace or not. To repeat Paul's question in verse 13, judge for yourselves, is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Again, this whole thing about this being an argument from nature, he's going to answer that question, and he's going to be thinking about nature. And he talks about a woman having long hair, and it is her glory. And then he says, for her hair is given to her for a covering. So the hair is supposed to be this covering. Whatever this covering is, he's talking about. And the word for covering in this passage is the Greek word parabolion. And we're going to be hearing that a couple times as we proceed. Let's introduce you to the Greek word parabolion. This may be the key to unlock our understanding. Troy Martin of St. Xavier University wrote in his paper entitled Paul's Argument from Nature for the Veil in 1 Corinthians 11:13 through 15, a testicle instead of a head covering. I quote, even though these scholars have identified the dominant semantic domain of this word, the term parabolion has much broader semantic range. Since parabolion is contrasted with hair, which is part of the body, the physiological semantic domain of parabolion in 1 Corinthians 11:15b becomes particularly relevant. Euripides uses parabolion in reference to a body part. He casts Hercules as complaining, after I received my bags of flesh, which are the outward signs of puberty, I received labors about which I shall undertake to say what is necessary. A dynamic translation of the first clause would be, after I received my testicles, parabolii, which are the outward signs of puberty. In this text of Euripides, the term parabolion refers to a testicle. This gives the hair or covering of the female a representation of a sexual organ. Martin continues, and I quote, Achilles Tadius plays on this meaning of parabolion in his erotic description of a garden in which Cleitophon seeks an amorous encounter with Leucippe. Achilles Tadius describes the entwinings of the flowers, embracings of the leaves, and intercourses of the fruits. He portrays this erotic garden by allusions to male and female sexual organs. The term paralochi alludes to the female hair, and the term parabolii to the testicles in males, and the term sorry, I'm new to this Greek stuff. Somplokai, to the mixing of the male and female reproductive fluid in the female. Achilles Tadius' description of this garden associates female hair with the testicles in males. This reference reinforces the use of parabolion in reference to testicles, again returning to Martin. Ancient medical conceptions confirm this association. Hippocratic authors hold that hair is hollow and grows primarily from either male or female reproductive fluid or semen flowing into and congealing. Since the hollow body parts create a vacuum and attract fluid, hair attracts semen. Particularly, the term kome refers not only to the hair but also to the arms and suckers of the cuttlefish. Hair grows most prolifically from the head because the brain is the place where the semen is produced, or at least is stored. Hair grows only on the head of the prepubescent humans, because semen is stored in the brain and the channels of the body have not yet become large enough for the reproductive fluid to travel throughout the body. At puberty, secondary hair growth in the pubic area marks the movement of reproductive fluid from the brain to the rest of the body. Women have less body hair not only because they have less semen, but also because their colder bodies do not froth the semen throughout their bodies, but reduce semen evaporation at the ends of their hair. According to these medical authors, and that was close quote, men have more hair. Oh, and this is continuing another quote here. According to these medical authors, men who have more hair because they have more semen and their hotter bodies froth this semen more readily throughout their whole bodies. The nature, phusis, of men is to release or eject semen. During intercourse, semen has to fill the hollow hairs on its way from the male brain to the genital area. Thus, men have hair growth on their face, chest, and stomach. A man with hair on his back reverses the usual position of intercourse. A man with long hair retains much or all of the semen, and his long hollow hair draws the semen toward his head area, but away from the genital area, where it should be ejected. Therefore, in 1 Corinthians 11:14 correctly states that it is a shame for man to have long hair, since the male nature, physis, is to eject rather than retain semen. In contrast, the nature, physis, of women is to draw up the semen and congeal it into a fetus. And that's close quote. Did you recognize Hippocrates in these references? Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath that our doctors even today take? He was looked on as the founder of what we call today modern medicine, and was considered perhaps the Surgeon General of his time. You can see that according to the medical knowledge of the time, the hair, especially a woman's hair, was considered to be a sexual organ. Can you now see why he is commanding women to cover it if they were praying, prophesying, or attending congregation meetings? According to their worldview, would it be proper for a woman to do these things with her genitalia exposed? Of course not. Quoting Dr. Heiser, informed by Jewish tradition, which strictly forbids display of genitalia when engaged in God's service, Paul's argument from nature cogently supports a woman's covering her head when praying and prophesying. In Isaiah 6:2, the seraphim who participate in divine liturgy have 6 wings. 2 are for flying, 2 cover the face for reverence, and 2 cover the feet for modesty. The term feet euphemistically refers to the genitalia of the seraphim. The priests in Yahweh's service receive special instructions for approaching the altar so that their nakedness is not exposed. And that references Exodus 20:26. Let's now turn our attention to the phrase Paul uses in reference to the head covering because of the angels. Lauren Stukenbrook published an article titled, "Why Should Women Cover Their Heads Because of the Angels?" The notion in Greco-Roman antiquity of female vulnerability and inferiority assumed in many Jewish sources, and the attendant practice of prophylactic head covering fit well with the early Jewish mythological interpretations of Genesis 6:1-4. With regard to this, New Testament scholars have customarily focused on the essentially evil character of the angels who fell because they were attracted by the beauty of the human daughters. This would be much in line with the Book of the Watchers of 1st Enoch and the Book of Giants. Here the more neutral sons of God in Genesis 6:1 are interpreted as the angels who have introduced evil into the world by instructing women in reprehensible matters and siring through them a race of oppressive giants. The gigantic offspring are seen as mala mixta, the result of illegitimate violation of the boundaries in cosmic order. With this background in view, some scholars even recently have interpreted the angels in 1 Corinthians 11:10 as categorically bad angels. The women wear head coverings as a protection against precisely these angels, because being invariably cast as male beings, they pose a sexual threat to the women. Can you see it? An ancient Near East Torah-observant Hebrew would be bringing into view the Genesis 6 narratives, as well as likely the Enochian material, when Paul states, because of the angels. But none of this applies to us today, right? That's why this topic's never addressed in congregations or over the pulpit. We have advanced so far that we know through science that the idea of hair being a sexual organ is just laughable, isn't it? If you have read Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn, you might not be so sure. I can attest to you that gods and demons have been released from the pit. This likely occurred in concert with the fullness of the Gentiles around the year 1967, It may have happened a bit earlier, but climaxed at this point. I don't know for sure. But those of you old enough will remember the hippie generation, where sexual promiscuity skyrocketed. Free love and anything goes mentality led to the phrase, "the devil made me do it." The adversary will tell you the truth about what they are doing. Honor the threat, as Joe likes to say. I had personal experience with a demon-possessed individual. At the time, I did not fully understand what was going on, as it was before I understood that the spiritual world is more real than this material world. But looking back on it, I am certain that is what I experienced. I remember driving home from the experience and crying and praying the whole way. And even as I was preparing to write this message, I again was influenced by demonic forces that were trying to distract me from preparing this message. Fortunately, I was able to recognize it and set it aside. So let's look at this idea from this little clause, because of the angels. Forget about science, but focus on this. Knowing the spiritual world is more real than this physical world, and an apostle of Christ is commanding women to cover their heads when praying and prophesying, and when meeting in congregation, shouldn't you women consider doing just that? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to ask you to consider this. Another point to consider is the whole of what I read at the beginning. Paul is talking about authority and submission to authority. Another part of this is Paul states in verse 10, that is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. What? This is really has little to do with covering a sexual organ, but it has everything to do with submission to authority. To what authority would the woman be submitting? If you reread the entire section I quoted you, you have the answer to the question. It is the authority of Yeshua HaMashiach, and to what I would say is a lesser degree, to her husband also. Now you might say, well, this is nowhere found in Yahweh's Torah. But is it? Is not the whole of the Bible Yahweh's Torah? Was not Paul an apostle, a sent one, directly from Yeshua HaMashiach? We may not find it in the Tanakh because it was simply understood by the people and followed because of their existing customs and traditions. Let's take a look at some of these traditions. Let's begin with the traditional Hebrew wedding. And I found this is some modern sources. This is from My Jewish Learning. The huppah is a symbol of God's presence at the wedding and in the home being established under the canopy. It was said that the divine name hovers over it, sanctifying the space below it. And after the ceremony, the rabbis invite couples to stand inside to recall or anticipate their own weddings. Starting in the 16th century, probably in Poland, a portable canopy held aloft by 4 poles came into use. In some European communities, the embroidered Torah art coverings, or parashet, were also used as a covering. But over time, it has become customary to marry under the talit, or prayer shawl, which was frequently a gift from the bride's family to the groom. The tzitzit, or ritual fringes on the prayer shawl, hanging above the couple's heads, were a reminder of the mitzvot, or commandments, they represent, and has been regarded as a talisman against evil spirits. This is symbolic of authority. The talit of the husband covering his wife. This gives the idea of the husband protecting the wife and caring for her. It is also, by extension, the reflection of being under the authority of Yeshua and depending on him for care and protection. Perhaps one could look at the head covering as a woman's version of the tzitzit. As tzitzits are commanded to men to remember the Torah, the head covering is a symbol of the woman's submission to Yeshua and to her husband. Also, according to the website jewishvirtuallibrary.org, it was customary for most women in the ancient Near East, Mesopotamia, and Greco-Roman world to cover their hair when they were outside the home. In biblical times, a woman covered their heads with veils or scarves. The unveiling of a woman's hair was considered a humiliation and punishment. And if you look into Isaiah 3:18 and Numbers 5:18, the loosening of the hair of a woman suspected in adultery was part of that ritual. It was not long ago. It was also a custom in our country for women to cover their hair. Women in church would be wearing hats. In fact, I remember Sister Clark, may her memory be blessed, who attended the Mormon church when I was still worshiping there. She was a righteous lady, and I have no doubt that Yahweh will look down with mercy upon her because she lived the life the best she knew how. And she always wore that hat to church. You know, I never thought much about it till I was writing this. Then contrast that, or to contrast what I observed to what we see in the LGBTQ community. In many cases, these women wear short hair or often shave their heads. Do you not see any connections here? They probably don't even realize it, but they are doing this. But by their doing this, they are showing their rebellion to Yahweh and Yeshua. It is, as our William says, it's an earth shadow of the spirit they are displaying. I believe because a woman's head covering was such a strong custom, you don't find direct references to the practice in the Torah, as it was just accepted as the social norm. So women, I place this challenge before you. Jeremiah 6:16. Thus says Yahweh, stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. Will you follow Yahweh or be like those in this verse that say, we will not walk in it? What does this phrase reflect? It reflects a spirit of rebellion. What does covering of the hair represent? A spirit of submission to Yeshua and Yahweh. Ultimately, sisters, you must decide for yourselves, as the scriptures state in Philippians 2:12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more so in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. Now I have droned on long enough, but I promised to touch briefly on the second section regarding women being silent in church. For the sake of time, I will just briefly bring out some highlights. And again, sisters, this is up to you to decide how you will respond to what I have to say. This may be a case where Paul was addressing a cultural issue. It may not be a general commandment. But let's look at what I feel are the main points to consider regarding this section. Paul begins by stating that there should be peace and not confusion. This harkens for me to the idea of order versus chaos. So this purpose is to set things in order. He then states that women should be silent in the church of Corinth, just as they are in the other churches, but should be in submission, as the law also says. What is Paul addressing here? I do not recall any law in the Tanakh that states a woman should not speak in church. But look carefully at the words preceding this statement. It says women should be in submission, as the law says. Again, this is not only about being silent in church, it is about being submissive to authority. If you read the entire chapter, it is clear that something was going on in the church of Corinth that made their worship services chaotic. It appears that there were many speaking in tongues or prophesying all at once, and therefore there was confusion and the body was not being properly edified. The mention of the woman apparently indicates that women were in some way being disruptive to the service, and therefore showing they were not submissive to the church authorities or to Yahweh and Yeshua. What does Paul mean in the latter sentence when he states, "For it is shameful for a woman to speak in church"? I honestly can't tell you what to do with that statement. If you look at the lines following, it may have to do with ecclesiastical authority. It might be as simple as women should not assert authority over the men who are in leadership authority, and it is the place of men to preach and teach in the church. This is one possible conclusion. I will leave it to you to decide. I think the overall takeaway for everyone, brothers and sisters, is that we all need to bend our knee to Yahweh and Yeshua and to seek to follow their Torah the best we can and understand and submit to their authority in our lives. Yahweh bless. Hallelujah.
Sit around here.
Yeah. And I hope my audio is.
You're good. You're good. Okay, real quick before we finish up. I've read that book. Well, not that one. I've read the other one. I've read parts of that book. That book was written by Ellis Schofield in conjunction with another book called Sunset in the Western Church. And both of those books, more in the one on Sunset of the Western Church, he is reacting strongly to the Pentecostal movement within the church. And he's trying to get the church to understand that a lot of what's going on in mainly in the Pentecostal, but throughout the whole of the visible church, is that the church has unwittingly, it's left its obedience and it's opened the door to unclean spirits coming into the body. And that's where he's really attacking. And he will mention in the demons into the church, he mentions how in some congregations where they've had a lot of trouble, one of the first things they did was they got together, kind of like we're doing now, and discussed the scriptures and the culture and everything. And when the women did start to wear the head coverings, not because of the head covering, but because of the submission, he said a lot of the trouble in those congregations started to get resolved. What that is just they started to actually pay attention to their scriptures, and they started to get themselves in an orderly manner of dealing with things, and they became obedient, submissive, the men to the Messiah and the Father, the women to their husbands and Messiah and Father. And the congregations got cleaned up in a lot of their problems. And he said people left too. What it was is they were chasing out the wolves that had crept into that congregation. This is why I said earlier in our Sabbath study, don't focus on the tree. I know what he's talking about. That's for you ladies to decide. And also pay attention to where Rick was focusing. Brother Rick was focusing, and the same thing with scriptures does. If you're praying, prophesying, or maybe if you're in what's considered Kadesh, the sanctuary or whatever, it's not that it was telling you to do this 24/7. And the big thing is the spiritual, it's just an outward sign of the spiritual alignment with the teaching of scripture. Now, when he went into, I know it was a long period, you probably thought that wasn't necessary, where he's teaching you the ancient history of the sexual organs. Folks, this isn't as ancient as you think. You know what Shakespeare wrote about what is woman but a lock of hair? That's a sexual comment on a woman's hair. Why did they shave the hair of the collaborators in France and Germany after the war? Shame them. Why would they think that's a shaming? That vestige had hung on in our culture all the way up until the 60s. Women were still going to church in bonnets and hats up until the feminist movement. Now, I don't want you to get this wrong. I'm not saying that the feminist movement is as it happened, it's a problem. But it doesn't mean that women aren't equal before Yahweh. They are. It's just that leadership in Yahweh's house is male. Not our men. We didn't do this. Yahweh did this. When there was trouble in the garden, who did Yahweh go after first? He went after Adam. Okay. Exactly. That was Adam's fault. Not Eve's. That was Adam's fault. And Adam paid the price for that. Does the New Testament say sin entered the world because of Eve? Nope. It says because of man, Adam, his fault. So what we have to understand if we're going to be Yahweh's people is it's all about order within his kingdom. He's given each of us tasks based on our sex and what we do within the kingdom, and he expects us to abide by them. What Rick's bringing up is, I get it. I mean, we wear our tzitzit. We don't think nothing about it, guys. It's just a symbol for the women, and it's something for y'all to consider. But as far as the women talking in the congregation, I don't ever want y'all to be silent. Not as, the acting head elder around here. That's not me. I think he had that plain. I've done some reading about Corinth. That's probably, from what we know, one of the earliest Pentecostal things were getting a little crazy there. They had a spirit of what would be known as a Greek orgy, which just means destruction. It's what that means. It's the Greek word means destruction. So they were getting out of hand, and Paul was probably addressing that part specifically to that congregation, because there's where you can find some allusions in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, about head coverings. You'll find nothing that I've seen in the Tanakh anywhere that tells women not to speak or ask questions or do, just to the point that you're not supposed to, so long as you have obedient, submissive men, submissive to Yahweh, women aren't supposed to be taking positions of authority within Yahweh's congregation. But if all you have is what we would call childless men, man children, if that's all you got left, then you have to step up and take that position. And Yahweh doesn't condemn that. And that passage in the prophets where it says they're led by women and children, that's a condemnation of the men within the body that were not doing their jobs. If you read that properly and culturally, that's not against women, or it's against little children. And that's the same word that there was used for the youth that attack the prophet on the road. That's for wayward males that never grew up. So I just wanted to make sure y'all understand, this is not a legalistic sermon that Rick was giving. This is let's get serious with the spiritual war that's going on. And in the intertestamental period, the Second Temple period there, the ideas that are associated with the Watchers and the giants and the fallen angels and all this, folks, that's a big deal going on in their time. The Essenes, it's there where we get a lot of that information from. It was that big a deal to them. This is Enochian material. And Jude and Peter both they paraphrase in sections of Enoch. And when Yeshua brings in the references to Gehenna, the lake of fire, that's straight from Enoch. That's where you find that. You don't find that in the Tanakh anywhere. That's Enochian material. So it's not being preached as divine word of Yahweh, but it is being affirmed as a cultural idea to teach spiritual messages and lessons. The lesson we should take apart from this is the spiritual struggle that we're in is very real. And in our modern scientific world, we tend to think it isn't, to our detriment, because it makes it easier for us to be deceived and led astray, which makes us less effective for the kingdom. I just wanted to make a comment on that. I knew about this sermon and I valued it. I think it was important. I thought it needed to be preached. I just don't want anybody in our congregation to run in the wrong direction with it. That's why I was saying, don't miss the forest for the tree. Hopefully that'll make sense. You want to finish up the song, or you want me to just...
Oh, no.
I'm not going to sing it as long as it's on the...
We want to hear you sing.
No, we don't. No, we don't. Come on, brother. I don't even know what song's next.
6.
We're told to communicate, unending congregate, join forces to even more as we hear the we need the closeness of family ties, the washing of the word to make us wise. And we'll put a big hug on both sides with every time of praise. It's about giving and sharing, loving and caring, lifting up every load. Never can feel wrong, causing the bitter that will strive to be turned into a river of life. Power of Yahweh using His love to work a miracle. Those times, those hearts to rest. Our right now is in the best. The building home of Hillary is over again. I'll hold you right here close to my heart. Pray for you while we're apart. To this place those fiery darts that you have a friend. It's about giving and sharing, loving and caring, lifting up every load. Evidence of your road, causing the bitter from the strife to be turned into a river of life. The power of Yahweh using His love to work a miracle. At last comes the day we follow the narrow way. Brothers and sisters, everyone, gather round the throne. Blending together, all places to sing, melting into one, exalting our King. Can't you feel the joy as the praises ring? We finally made it home. It's about giving and sharing, loving and caring, lifting up every load. Everything on you road, causing the bitter from the strife to be turned into a river of life. The power of Yahweh using His love to work a miracle.
Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your word. We ask that you bury it into our hearts and help us to make it a part of our lives. We ask that you keep your hedge of protection around each and every one of us and around this congregation, this piece of your kingdom, and to help us to wrestle with you and to wrestle with your spirit and seek for his guidance and wisdom, and to learn how to apply your life in our lives in a way that would be pleasing and approved by you, Father. And then to help us show it not only to our brothers and sisters in the kingdom, but also to the world around us, and to be a light to an ever darkening world. We also thank you for the food we're about to receive, and we ask that you bless it for us. Use it to the nourishment of our bodies and to further us into the service of your kingdom. We ask all of this in your Son's holy and precious name. So be it. Baruch haba Hashem Yahweh. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. Hallelujah.
All right, Rick?
Yeah, I'm fine. Now,
I knew you were there shooting.
it's over.
Nobody threw anything
I
in
mean,
it.
it's